welcome everyone to the Virtual World's Best Practices in Education Conference. We have a very special featured panel session today with very distinguished and creative guests. You can learn more about our featured panel guests and their work at Seanchai Library, a virtual library out loud, and their website is there in the local chat. For our discussion today, the purpose of this panel is to discuss how the Seanchai Library has been successful in maintaining a library with events that are interactive and engaging since 2008. The panelists will focus on a unique choice of being a library. Today we have 4 guests for our panel discussion, and we would like to tell you a little bit about each of them. Oife Lorfield, Mary Pat Lynch. Her career included instructional design, faculty development, and educational research in medical education. She has an MA in anthropology and a PhD in higher education from Indiana University, Bloomington. Academic and technical writing has now given way to poetry, essays, and fiction appearing in Parabola, Sage Woman, Pangea, and various annuals for Llewellyn. She began reading at the Seanchai Library soon after joining Second Life in 2008. Shannon Loring is another one of our panelists today, and Shannon was Seanchai Library's first storyteller in the original incarnation as the West of Ireland Library and Cultural Center back in March 2008. Shannon brings a rich respect for Irish literature, a love of the land, and a keen sense of whimsy to everything from ancient Irish myths whimsy to ghost stories and adventures from around the world. We also have Dubna Raihadra with us today. She has degrees in theology and Welsh. As a folklorist, Catherine Blackfeather shares folk tales from around the world and writes her own new folk tales for 21st century audiences. She has a unique and soulful style that brings her tales to life. Catherine Blackfeather was born in Canada but grew up in England. She is a dancer, a live storyteller, and poet. She has self-published a couple of books to Amazon under her real-life name, but finds the whole process of doing that so tedious, she'd rather just make new stories and poems and share them in Second Life. And next we have Caledonia Skytower. Her real-world background, both academically and professionally, includes over 30 years in nonprofit arts management and production in theater and opera. Over 6 years ago, she tripped into virtual worlds while in pursuit of venues for arts advocacy and discovered that after decades in theater, she had a certain talent for performing. Hundreds of hours and thousands of stories later, she has been inspired to self-publish her own short stories under her real name, Judith Cullen, as well as explore further avenues to use virtual worlds as tools for creative expression and education. So again, we welcome everyone to our panel discussion for today. And as we begin, please feel free to back channel in the local chat area. And we will try to capture and review all questions and answer those at the end of our discussion. For our first question, we will be starting with Oife. What do you feel is unique about what the Seanchai Library does and why it has endured and continued to draw audiences after 7 years?
Hi, everyone, and thanks for this opportunity to talk about a place and a program that has been dear to my heart since I started in Second Life. So I'm going to lead off with something that is easier for me to mention because I have not been as much a core member of the staff as some of the other folks here on this panel with me and some of the other members of the Seanchai. I believe that one of the things that keeps the Seanchai thriving is the dedication and talent of the core staff. Our founding director, Darby McMahon, and current director, Caledonia, and first Seanchai, which it means storyteller, Shandon, and many faithful and highly talented readers like Dove are absolutely key to what's kept the program going.
Thank you, Oife. It is amazing to learn about the creative work that the Seanchai Library continues to share with others. And Duvna, can you tell us about what you feel is unique about the library and why it has continued to draw so many for the different performances?
Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Well, again, like Oife, I'm not a key member of Seanchai Library, mainly because I'm based in the UK. And for me, the thing that is unique about Seanchai is that they have such a solid and regular program. They have something on every single evening of the week, or at weekends, it's often during daytime. As I'm based in the UK, that their regular 7 o'clock storytelling sessions they would be 3 o'clock in the morning for me. So I'm not part of that, but they have a solid team of people. They have a regular daily program. So people who are just logging in at the end of a day, they know that they can always look around and see, oh, what's Seanchai doing today? You know, and as a storyteller who I tell stories often in other venues, I feel that they're having that kind of really solid organization that just keeps going, and they have so much hard work put into keeping their programs going. For me, that kind of supports me even when I'm not actually at telling stories actually at Seanchai. It's like they're there, they're kind of enabling everybody who's telling stories in every different context and at all the different venues. Somehow or other, Seanchai is there as this kind of senior organization, really, that helps us all.
Thank you, Duvna. Yes. The organization is fabulous, and it really brings great performances to all. And next we will have Caledonia tell us about the work and success of the Seanchai Library.
Hi there. Hopefully everyone can hear me. I think to sort of build on the idea that we have a dedicated staff and regular performances is because of the regularity with which we present 4 weeknights and on weekends. I think Friday is the only day of the week that we don't actually have an active program because, well, we have to rest sometime. I think that we end up building community by that frequency. We get roughly a 60 to 40 split between people who are regular, who come, who will come sometimes for 6, 8, 12 months at a time, every night, sometimes years. We have one person who comes almost very regularly since the day we opened our doors. And then we have other people who come and go at different intervals, and so there's always a refreshing of the community. I think people get to know each other by the communal act of sharing the stories together. And I think we balance that off of a certain intimacy of the act of, I mean, you're all listening to us on headsets or on speakers or whatever, and it ends up feeling like someone's telling a story just to you. So I think that sort of communal, intimate experience becomes part of what makes it unique as well.
Thank you, Caledonia. Yes, definitely a very unique experience, and it's very personal also for everyone who attends. And we will now have Shandon tell us about the creative work of the Seanchai Library and why he thinks it has continued to draw audiences after so many years.
Thank you, Cindy. Good to see everybody. I hope it's because people share kind of a passion that I do, and And my why for being here is to continue the oral traditions of the Celtic and the Irish bards. That's storytellers. That's why I do so many legends and ancient tales. I also do modern material this century and last, and tie in universal connections to timeless literature. They're common threads, I think, that run through most tales, though in changing ways suitable to current audiences and society. If you look at modern movies, themes are frequently have their roots in the old and oral tales. And we often say writing a story, your life is like writing a story, and life experiences are expressed in stories. In the past, there were tales of abductions by the fairy folk. Today's there's tales of abductions by UFOs. People's lives are reflected in and even shaped by the communal human experience of stories. It's a privilege as a storyteller to be part of this. This stretches from the unseen past into the unknowable future.
Thank you so much, Shandon. Yes, definitely, it's a totally unique experience, and it does provide a real community for everyone who attends. And at this time, we're going to be having Caledonia share with us about what she feels is meaningful to residents about reading literature and presenting stories live in voice, the act of storytelling. And then she will invite our other panelists to share their ideas as well.
Well, one of the things that I think you have to know about all four of us up here, including the two with funny tales, is that we actually, for the most part, prefer doing what we're talking about rather than talking about what we're talking about. So wanted to share with you, because we have, I can say that with some, okay, it's the teeth, isn't it? I can say that with some surety that there are four very gifted storytellers on this panel. And also four very diverse voices. And I'm not just speaking about the tone of our voices, but the style and our choices of literature. So what we're going to do is we're going to each share with you a selection from literature and poetry. They're not too long. And then we'll comment on the act of storytelling, some of which we've hit a little bit before in the previous. So here's the part where we do what we do, and we don't just talk about what we do. I'd like to share with you how to count to 100, which is a legend from the Omaha tribe in North America. There was an eager young man whose ambition it was to become a respected elder in his tribe. He desired to be a member of the White Shell Society, powerful among his people, admired, revered. He asked a tribal elder. The elder, who had seen many such young men before, told the young man, "You must learn to count to 100. That is simple enough, the young man thought. Now one day, soon after, a homeless, dirty, shriveled old woman limped into the village. There were many who stared at her, disgusted, and hurried away. Some whispered behind their hands, pointed at her, gossiped about her. But there was one man in the village who had compassion for the old woman. "Grandmother, please come. Come in and rest," he said. He beckoned her and gently put his arm around her and guided her into his home, inviting her inside.
Testing.
He welcomed her and offered her water and drink. When she had rested and refreshed her thirst, he gave her soup and a bit of bread to fill her belly as much as she wanted. He called to his wife and daughters, "Help grandmother to wash and change into fresh clothes. Give her the buckskin dress I needed and the new moccasins that we traded for." The wife and the daughter bathed the old woman, washed her hair, combed out the tangles, braided it, and dressed her in her fine new clothes. Then they smiled together in the small home and invited the old woman to live with them and join their family. Later, the ambitious young man saw the grandmother with her new family. "Is that the wretched old homeless woman? Who has done this?" The same elder as before responded to him, smiling wisely. "My son, that is one. And that is How to Count to 100, a legend of the Omaha tribe. So let's see, why don't we go ahead and go to my left, and Shannon, why don't you go, and then Aoife, and then Duvna. How's that? And then we can comment on it afterwards.
Yes, Madam Director, ma'am. That was nice, Callie. I would think we need to hear 99 more pieces of that. So I have a quick little selection from Darby O'Gill. And now, out of the murkiness in the road ahead of him, something began to grow slowly into a tall and slender white figure. He had pressed down the heart of Darby. He felt, too, that another shade had taken its place behind him, and he didn't want to look, and he strove against looking. But something forced the lad to turn his head around. And there, sure enough, not 5 feet away, stood still and silent the tall and dark figure of a man in a great topcoat. And then came from every direction low and hissing whispers that the lad couldn't understand. Something terrible would happen in just a minute. He knew that well. There's just so much fear in every man, just exactly as there's only a certain amount of courage. And when the fear is all spilt, a man either fights or he dies. At least so Darby had always said. And I remembered there was a gap in the hedge nearly opposite the clump of willows. And so he made up his mind that, come what might, he'd make a grand charge for it, and so into the upland meadow beyond. He waited an instant to get some strength back until his knees, and then he gave a great spring. But that one spring was all he made in that direction at last. For, as he neared the ditch, a dozen white, ghostly hands reached out eager for him. With a gasp, he whirled in his tracks and he rushed mad to the widow's opposite. But there 100 ghastly fingers were stretched out to meet the poor lad. And as he staggered back into the middle of the road again, the hero couldn't, to save his own soul, he couldn't keep back a long cry of terror and distress. Now imagine, if you will, from under the willows and from the ditch near the hedge and in the air above his head, from countless dead lips echoed that triumphant and unearthly laugh. Aye, but at that minute there floated from a great way off the faint cry of a voice that the dispersion man knew well. "Oh, keep up your heart, Darby O'Gill," cries out Brian Connors. "We're coming to rescue ye." And from the fields and from wild cheer followed them words. "Ah, falla, balla, lalla, clear the way," sprang the shrill war cry of 1,000 good people. At first, the king of the good people's words there rose about Darby, the mighty flurrying and rushing of wings in the darkness, as if the tremendous birds arising sully and flying away in the air emptied itself of smothered heaviness. So fast came the king's fairy army, the great cheer was still echoing among the trees when the gold crown of Brian Connors sparkled up from beside the knowledgeable man's knees. At that, the persecuted man, our Darby, sobbing with joy, knelt down in the muddy road to shake hands with his friend, the very master of the good people. "Oh, Darby, if ever a man needed a drop of good whiskey, you're the hero, aren't you? And this is the time and place for it," says the king, and he handed up a silver-topped noggin. "Drink it all," he says, "and we'll escort you home. Come on." That's a quick little excerpt from Darby O'Gill.
Thank you, Shandon. That was fabulous. I hope I'm coming through okay. And this is Aoife, and my specialty is poetry. One of the things that means a lot to me in my storytelling on the grid is when I'm going to do a poetry session and someone, maybe a couple people even, will say, "I'm here and I'll listen, but I don't really like poetry." And then after they hear some, they say, "Wow, I was wrong. I love poetry." So I'm going to read 2 selections that may be familiar. They're both fabulous poems by some of my special poets.
Join your channel.
The first one is Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about your despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies, deep trees, the mountains, and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese high in the clean blue air are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. Mary Oliver's Wild Geese. The other poem I'd like to read is from another favorite poet. This one is Billy Collins' Nightclub. You are so beautiful, and I am a fool to be in love with you, is a theme that keeps coming up in songs and poems. There seems to be no room for variation. I've never heard anyone sing, I am so beautiful and you are a fool to be in love with me, even though this notion has surely crossed the minds of women and men alike. You are so beautiful, too bad you are a fool is another one you don't hear. Or, you are a fool to consider me beautiful, that one you will never hear guaranteed. For no particular reason this afternoon, I'm listening to Johnny Hartman, whose dark voice can curl around the concepts of love, beauty, and foolishness like no one else's can. It feels like smoke curling up from a cigarette someone left burning on a baby grand piano around 3 o'clock in the morning. Smoke that billows up into the bright lights while out there in the darkness, some of the beautiful fools have gathered around little tables to listen, some with their eyes closed, others leaning forward into the music as if it were holding them up, or twirling the loose ice in a glass, slipping by degrees into a rhythmic dream. Yes, there is all this foolish beauty born beyond midnight that has no desire to go home, especially now when everyone in the room is watching the large man with the tenor sax that hangs around his neck like a golden fish. He moves forward to the edge of the stage and hands the instrument down to me and nods that I should play. So I put the mouthpiece to my lips and blow into it with all my living breath. We are all so foolish. My long bebop solo begins by saying, so damn foolish. We have become beautiful without even knowing it. And that is Nightclub by Billy Collins. Thank you.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Oife. Well, as it said in my introduction, that I have a background in theology and I've been studying folklore since I was 17 years old. What I like to do is to retell the old stories in my own words and to find fresh insights that just resonate with me. And recently I found myself thinking about all the stories about tricksters. Raven is very important to me, but this is a story from Africa about Eshu, the trickster. I've just typed that into local so you know, and it's my retelling of it. Eshu walks down the line between two men who love each other as brothers. They've always loved each other, these two. They've always agreed on everything, as long as they always saw everything the same. They would continue to love each other. So Eshu, who some call the trickster, decided to give just one little nudge to that love. Let's see how much they really do love each other, he thought. Well, of course, he's just a mischief maker, isn't he? We all know that, don't we? So he walked along the path between the two men as each of them worked in his fields. He was the first stranger they'd seen in a long time in their little village life. It was a break from routine. Both men got a good eyeful It made their day. Oh, they were going to enjoy talking about this strange-looking man they'd seen walking down between them. Like, where was he off to? What was he going to do? Why was he painted all over like that? So that night, they sat together after their evening meal, enjoying the quiet of the evening, sharing a smoke. Hey, did you see that man today, painted all in red? I wonder where he was going. Red? What do you mean, red? He was painted all over in blue. Well, you know, just that one little tiny disagreement made all the love those men had for each other turn to hatred instantly. They'd never disagreed about anything before. It hurt them terribly. It wounded their psyches, this first failure to see eye to eye. One had seen a red man, t'other clearly saw a blue man. I mean, it was clear as daylight. How could they both be wrong? So they fell to blows. They were so angry they could kill each other. Each of them felt terribly betrayed by the other. Well, you know, Aishu didn't let it go too far. He didn't want actual bloodshed. He just wanted to teach them a lesson. He appeared between them again, but this time he showed himself face on to them both, and they could see that he was painted one side completely red and the other side completely blue. But each had seen him from a different side. See, he said, I'm the same person, whether you see me red or blue. You must learn that what you see isn't always the whole truth. Well, it wasn't that easy. The two men, they just stood there looking at him, still sweating and panting from their fight. And one of them said, well, I didn't see any red on you earlier when you walked on the path. I'm sure you were blue all over then. He'd nearly shed blood for his belief. He wasn't going to let a little thing like evidence get in the way of it now. Well, you know, we know those kind of people. Huh, you're a fool to think that, said the other. Can't you see he's done this deliberately? Huh, he's nothing but a troublemaker. He was just a bit wiser, but he still wanted someone to beat up. And the first man wanted someone to beat up too. So he says, well, what you say is true enough, but still, I'm never going to forget the things you said to me when we were fighting. I'm never going to forgive you for that, even if it was him who started it, he said, glaring at his erstwhile friend. Well, I can't believe in anything at all now, said the other, now that I've seen how deceitful the gods are, and I've seen a different side of you I didn't know was there. I can see now that life is just a crock of shit, and you can't trust anyone or anything, and he stamped off in a fury. And then the first one turned on Aishu and he said, why do you always make trouble, Trickster? Everything's changed now. Our lives will never be the same, and it's just because of you. Aishu looked sad. Well, I did hope that you and your friend would learn a deeper truth, but it'll be up to the two of you to work on that. And he spun round, and when he faced the man again, his colours had changed sides. Now the man couldn't remember which colour he'd seen first or which side it had been on. And then Aishu spun round again, and this time the colours were yellow and green. He spun again, and this time the colours had gone, but he was an old man on one side and a child on the other. I could go on, he said, but enough is enough. We tell you again and again that God cannot be contained by your images and stories, that all of them are true and none. Whatever name you call me by, my nature is the same. It is your own desire to pin me down and label me that tricks you. Every now and then one of you grasps this and tries to teach what he's learned, but then you just take what my prophets teach and you turn it into another label. He shook his head sadly. And then he winked an eye and turned into a fly. And as he buzzed off, the man heard a whisper in his ear. I am God. I am Allah. I am Yahweh. I am Trickster. I am one. Well, the man just shook his head and he said, oh, no, you can't be all those things. You've got to be one or the other. And then a raven flew over and croaked. Who says? That's me.
So you've heard four different stories, four very different stories, four very different styles. And I think that's part of the strength of what we do. In fact, this is actually kind of a rare experience. We don't always get to hear each other because we're so busy doing what we do. So I know that Shanda doesn't often get to hear Dubna and vice versa. You heard philosophy, you heard cultural ideas, cultural reflection, humor, all sorts of different ideas that were expressed out of those stories, all very short. Even the poems, each had a unique contribution to make. And I'm going to invite my fellow panelists to also comment on this. I think one of the things that is great about what we do, the active live stories in voice, is there's a lot of people doing a lot of wonderful things with language arts in the OpenSim, in closed grids like Second Life and InWorlds, a lot of really wonderful things. What we do is all keyed on live. It has an emotional immediacy. It is beautifully imperfect. It is a moment that's shared, and it is a miracle that we, using virtual platforms, can share those moments with people who we might not ever meet, people in other countries, people in other continents. And I think that becomes the power when you mix that with the communal intimacy of the group gathered to hear the story around the fire. We're just now all gathered around the computer to tell the story. That's one of the things that makes it special and unique, and for me, very powerful. I can be feeling really crappy on any given day, and I will start doing a presentation from literature, and I will feel great, and I will feel fine, and I will completely relax, and I will transport myself, and that'll last for about 30 minutes after I finish. So there's something powerful about doing that. And actually, I'm going to ask, why don't we go back in the same order? Why don't we go Shandon, Oife, and Dubna, if you want to build on those comments.
Thank you, Eladronia. Part of the act of storytelling, active storytelling, it's, I think she says it's a privilege. It's something that feels good to you. It's something you have to embrace and want to do, and you have to understand that people want to hear you. You need to be confident and know that they're there to listen to you. After 8 years, this is well validated. They keep coming back. In virtual worlds, even more so. A simple click, and they're gone. They don't have to get up and say, excuse me, and walk out the door. Boom, they're gone. If they don't want to hear you, they're not there. Part of the making a good story is something you embracing it, something you enjoy, something that means something to you, and sharing that love with the people in the room, but also making it not just a one-on-one thing where you're the storyteller reading to a person, but as Callie said, and as we've all said, I think it's a communal thing. As you're telling a story, interact with the audience. If they react to something in the story, react to their reactions. If somebody's wearing, in virtual worlds, we have the great benefit of being able to dress and be anything we want. So if someone's dressed some particular way, play the story to that. It's stories are written down, but our art is oral, and it's very fluid as we go through our evening of telling stories. And I think that's a real important part of it. It's not just a stiff reading; it's an interaction. It is an art, and that's I think that's part of what makes it special. Why people keep coming back to listen to us and share their own life stories with us.
So what can I add? I guess what I'd want to say is that it's been the same for me. Many of us in today's world live somewhat fragmented lives. In the midst of crowds, isolated from people who are like us. And one of the wonderful things about virtual worlds is being able to connect with like-minded others and gather around that virtual campfire and share the stories. So there's that part of bringing things to new audiences, which is fabulous and wonderful, and also that part of finding your tribe and being able to connect all across the world. I have never met in real life any of the three people on the panel here with me, but I have known them for years and consider them all to be very good friends. And the same is true for some of the members out in the audience as I look out. It's an unbelievably wonderful thing to do it, and being able to do that through the avenue of these ancient threads of story cast in modern themes is a wonderful gift.
I would reiterate that live storytelling is such a different experience. I actually know of people who had spent over a year wandering around in Second Life, wondering what they were doing there. And then the first time they heard somebody telling stories live, they were just blown away. And it immediately created a kind of a different experience of being in a virtual world for them. They realized that there was something going on that they, that they could really relate to, just because of the sense of the presence of the person behind the story. Yeah, I think the only other thing I'd really love to add, because we're seeing a little bit of it going on here, is I love being able to hear somebody through my ears telling a story and to be able to make wisecracks about it or read wisecracks that other people are making in local chat. And when I'm performing as a storyteller, I know I couldn't possibly have anybody doing that in voice in real life, because I do tell stories in real life. But it's great because you kind of know that people are really engaged in it, but they're not doing anything that interferes with the storytelling because they're not talking over you. So that's just another little side of it that I just love.
Thank you all for sharing these amazing examples of the compelling work that you all are doing. Such personal experiences that you bring to everyone in attendance, and these readings were wonderful, and the storytelling is wonderful as well. And we have another question for our discussion coming up, and we'll begin with Oife. And can you tell us, Oife, about the opportunities for meaningful learning and engagement in this kind of presentation of literature and stories for the individual, for institutions, and for the future?
I would love to. And we are so many things we could talk about here. And one of the things that I will choose to share is something that relates to my own personal experience. I mentioned just now the wonderful aspect of connecting with people from all over the world. But another part of this is how virtual realities give us the opportunity to connect with people who have limited opportunities outside the home due to illness, due to ability restrictions, due to personal responsibilities. I myself have some health challenges that led to a very much premature departure from my career. And for me personally, being able to bring some of my interests, some of my professional abilities into a space like this and bring them to bear in a way that, as Duvna said, affects people. You know, you're interacting with people and having an impact on them is a great gift. And one of the things that I've learned being in Second Life primarily, but of course other virtual worlds as well, is how many of us here have that as at least part of our life experience, that we have some limitations. And virtual means that physical limitations, some of them, are mitigated, and we can do things that are in some ways just not possible for us. So that's the one aspect I'd like to bring forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Oife. There are so many wonderful learning possibilities. And next we will have Shandon talk about the learning opportunities that the Seanchai Library provides.
Thank you, Sindel. Excellent statements, Oife. Seanchai Library obviously uses online technologies, modern technologies, virtual reality, things that didn't exist so many years ago. And that gives us a unique well, a powerful medium to for learning and sharing our experiences. We have engaged local libraries, local theaters, and drawn them into stories. And part of what I do when I present stories, and many of us do, is we give people a background of what the stories are, where they came from, why we're reading them. We nearly always will put up at the reading itself a display of what the book is, how to find the book, where to get more information from it. We often engage the authors either before or after the storytelling, and they'll spread the word out farther to their own little audiences, or sometimes rather large, sizable audiences. And it's a spreading of the of literature, of stories, and engaging people in seeing perhaps new ideas, things they hadn't felt or didn't know they even liked. As Oife said when she started poetry, I don't know if I'd like that. If you sit and listen to Oife, you'll like poetry. So it's a part of what the engagement is. We're bringing people in, helping them see things they haven't perhaps seen before, and helping them move on to other places with this. We've done a poll at one point with our audience and said, when you hear a story, just get up and leave when you're done, or do you pursue more, or do you go out and find your own books? And overwhelmingly, they said they go and read their own books. They'll seek out the same book or something in that topic. So there's a lot of opportunity here for institutions beyond just educational, but we're enjoying it. And for the future, I see us being here for quite some time to come yet.
Thank you, Shandon. Exciting possibilities. Okay, and now we go to Duvna to learn about the possibilities for engagement that she sees and that she can see for the future and for organizations and individuals as well.
Going back to the educational opportunities offered by the Seanchai Library program, I think, well, the obvious one is the fact that for, I lost count of how many days a week it is, but more days than not a week, you have a different person airing stories in one form or another, and they're all so different. You have Gyro Muggins with this incredible science fiction collection. You have Callie totally rekindling my love of Dickens with her regular Dickens annual event. Plus, I've never actually read any Sherlock Holmes because I see it on telly all the time, but I've loved hearing Caledonia and her team reading Sherlock Holmes properly, from the book, not a made-for-television series. There's so many different ways that we're introduced to, and to folklore and the Irish stuff. There's so much to listen to. But the other, I've been thinking about this. The other big educational opportunity it provides is for the storytellers themselves to actually learn voice performing skills. Because we do have some people who have backgrounds in theatre, but we have a lot of people who have amazing collections of literature to share, but who've never really learned to use their voices. And I have heard, I was going to say seen, but I mean heard them improving over time. And we kind of learn from each other. If you go in and you listen, when you're a storyteller, you listen to other storytellers with a kind of educated ear, and you go, oh, I never thought you could do that. And I've had people come up to me and say, I've just suddenly realized what I can be doing because I've heard you reading the way you read. And I've realized that I've been holding back too much, and that actually I should really go for it, because I tend to go for it a bit, and we learn from each other. We absorb other people's techniques, even though we're kind of keeping to our own style. And that has, I think, you can generalize what you've learned here, and you can use it in other areas of your life. I'm sure anybody who has one of those jobs where they have to go and do presentations in a board meeting, if they've been doing storytelling and they've had Caledonia coaching them, because she quite often gives people kind of little tutorials, or I think she does, on tips on how to use their voice better, they're going to be better even when they're giving some terribly boring presentation at work, surely.
Thank you, Duvna. And next we will hear from Caledonia about learning opportunities the library brings for all of our different groups, individuals, institutions, and possibilities for the future.
Well, I actually kind of want to start with a little anecdote because I had been doing this for quite some time when I was asked at work, back when I was still had a full-time job with a performing arts agency. In a meeting, I was asked to read a document out loud, and I read it like I was telling a story, and they never asked me to do that again. Oh, anyway, yeah, that's all you want is a rental document read like it's Dickens. I think part of it is, there's lots of opportunity in a virtual platform to connect people, and I think sometimes there's a lot of people making connections that are already there and doing them in engaging ways. When you look at us as a library, and actually when you go and look at all our library spaces, you can get links to books there, you can get books on note cards there, but one of the ideas that we were founded on was the idea that avatars do not read books, that people read books. And what we do is we are a physical, in some ways, library, in the sense that we're a library of the voice. We check out a book and we read it to you. And I have learned about so many other forms, so many other authors that I've been introduced to by people sitting on these couches right here that I probably would not have been connected to. And as Shandon pointed out, we do know, in fact, that people are inspired, having seen the books, to having heard the books, to actually go out and then physically read them to themselves again. So it bears out our experience that when people love a story, they will seek it out in all its forms. So I think that becomes a huge opportunity. So much more convenient to listen to me read from a book for an hour. I often read books in series where I do it over a course of 4 or 5 weeks. Then the daunting task of buying it and sitting it down, and how many people buy books and then set them down and say, I'm going to get to that. Well, it's a lot easier when you're listening to it and you're doing other things. I'm sure people are doing other things sometimes. We know that with certain titles, people are actually have the speakers on their computer on, and several people will be listening through one avatar. So it's a really unique opportunity to be a library of voice for people and help introduce them to different literature and different forms. We didn't do it today, but we often have sets and costumes and props that are part of our presentation. And they go from everything to very, very simple things to very, very complex things. And one of the things that we have done here in OpenSim, that's something that we're expanding to, is full immersive. And I don't really have time to talk to go into detail about this, but I would invite you, I'm dropping this into local chat, to check out our project site for Explore. We just did a pilot program in partnership with a live theater company who was producing Simon Levy's stage adaptation of The Great Gatsby, and we created a fully immersive simulation in Kitely, inspired by the book, very much inspired by the book, my degrees in set design. And we presented the literature live in voice, and the environment was evocative, inspired by Fitzgerald's words, and also was totally linked. So not only could you listen to the literature read out loud, but you could also get cultural and social and historical background information on Prohibition and flappers, and the social and economic impacts in the early 1920s on Art Deco, on early jazz. You could access information and text in many cases on the entire canon of Fitzgerald's literature, in addition to biographical information on him, all in one sim. And the idea was that this is a very elaborate framework for presenting the language. And the pilot was a great success. And we're looking forward. Actually, we've got a couple. Not only did our original partner, Tacoma Little Theater, want to pursue doing more of these, but we have a small museum and another theater company who are also interested in us continuing to do this. And I think there's lots of ways to apply this. In my part of the world, in the Western United States, there can be lots of space between people, even in this 21st century. And I think while Oife refers to proximity and barriers from the physical point of view, I think that also manifests itself in just distance. That sometimes there are lots of distance between people, and the internet can be a way to connect those people. And I think that's a real positive potential of the platform.
Thank you, Caldonia. And thank you all for sharing such fabulous opportunities for learning and storytelling with the Seanchai Library. At this time, if there are any questions or comments from our audience here, if you could please type those in local chat. We do have just a few minutes to cover that. And actually, Caldonia, I saw on your website that you all are actually doing a performance this evening. Could you tell us a little bit about that, the time of it in SLT, and also the location where we can find you all?
Oh, that's right, because we're actually not just Seanchai Library anymore. We're Seanchai Libraries, and that happened in the last year. We have a large property in Kitely. Our home base is Second Life in the Community Virtual Libraries Sim Imagination Island. And you can find the Slurl link to that on our website. And we're also on the 28th going to be opening a branch at InWorlds. We were asked by the community library there to be their guest, and they've given us some space there. Tonight at 7 o'clock, SLT, Shandon will be presenting a part of a series he's been doing. We've got, we're like Starbucks, we're on every corner. We're Celtic myths and magic, which he's been doing in a series, and tonight's focus is secret places of the Fae. And then we have what is our most casual of weekly story sessions, which is Seanchai Late Night, which happens every other week at 9 o'clock, again, SLT Pacific time. And it tends to be science fiction. Tonight it will be me. And it's going to be a surprise what I do tonight. So that will be then. And then we'll be in Kitely this weekend, 9 o'clock on Saturday morning, 10 o'clock on Sunday morning, and then at noon on Sunday, at our Second Life location on Imagination Island, we will be celebrating our 7th birthday with 90 minutes of stories from different members of our staff, and then we're going to clear away the chairs and dance.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for letting us know where we can find you and the different times and events that will be taking place coming up. And we would like to thank our distinguished guests for sharing with us today about the amazing work that they are doing at the Seanchai Libraries. And we hope to see everyone at the next performance this evening at 7 p.m. Second Life time. Thank you all for attending today.